By now you've probably heard the unfortunate news that Joann's Fabric is going out of business and they're closing all 800 stores. So where are we supposed to get fabric now? But look no further, because I have some options for you of where you can get fabric in person. Yee! I'm gonna go over 3 of generic stores that you can get fabric from in person so you can touch all of those fabrics, because I'm definitely, I have to feel the fabric before I buy it. Obviously there are options that you can buy online, but I want to focus on mostly the in-store buying process. As well as if you have other stores that you like to buy for, let us know in the comments down below. As well as don't forget to share your area, so that way if you have a specific local fabric store, that other people in the community can find it as well. And I'll also do at the end of the video a few of the online stores that I like to do as alternatives in case none of these are available for you. So let's go. And our first store on the list is Michaels. And I was really surprised to find that Michaels had a decent selection of generic fabrics. And I actually liked their selection, especially how they organized everything. It was very, very labeled, so you knew this was this type of fabric and this one and this one. And yeah, I'm surprised that they had everything labeled. They even had a specific section that they considered costume, and they had a satin and a cosplay section. Oh my gosh. Not that it was a great selection, but it still had some that would be more specialized. It had all of your basic tulle, it had muslin, so you can do your pattern making, and your generic fleeces, flannels, everything that you could need for basic sewing. As well as they had my favorite type of fabric that I like to use for my cosplays, specifically for anime cosplays, and that's Kona fabric. And this one I just find to be really useful, and it comes in a huge wide variety of colors, and I'm sure online they have a much wider selection, but this is what they had in store, which actually was pretty good and was surprising. One thing that was a little confusing with Michaels that you'll need to be aware of is they don't have a cutting counter for your fabric by the sewing section. You actually have to go to their framing section and ask to get your fabric cut there. I have not done it yet, so if you have, let me know in the comments how your experience was with that, but I'm sure it's just fine. In terms of patterns, Michaels has a very limited amount, at least at my store location. They still did have all of your basic tools and materials that you would need for like sewing, scissors, sewing machine parts, whatnot. They had a small button selection, a very small zipper selection, and an okay size, a different type of thread selections, and everything was pretty decent. It was actually really clean, but I did go to a more pinky out, fancy one that was newer in a more expensive area of Omaha, so that might be a difference. But I do think Michaels is a great option, and hopefully they will grow their selection now that, unfortunately, Joann's is going away. So we will see. And on to our second store that you can buy fabric from in person, and that is the wonderful world of Walmart. And I'll say that I've been to a few Walmarts, and each of their sewing selections are quite a bit different. When I lived in Texas, the sewing department was quite large, and they had a few staff members that worked on it, one that was always at the cutting counter, one that was always helping, and they had like 3 or 4 aisles of fabric. The location that I went to here in Nebraska, well, it was not as great, so it's a little hit or miss. Also, I know smaller Walmarts might not even have a fabric selection, so you will have to visit your local one to find out. And I'll say that this Walmart that I went to, it didn't look like they actually really had too many customers for their sewing, considering their cutting counter was full of just knickknacks, so I don't think they get too many people. Also probably didn't help that Joann's was right next door, but this may change, as we all know. So yeah. And one of the big differences that I found with Walmart was a lot of their generic cotton fabrics. They did not have on bolts. They were already pre-cut in bundles, either 2 yards or 4 yards. There was nothing in between or anything, so it was like a pre-bundled thing that you could buy. It's good for having large stocks of, but it can be a little frustrating if you want one consistent cut of fabric, if you need 6 yards at once because you're doing a giant train and you don't want all these cut seams or whatnot. So yeah, they did surprise me though that they had a lot of costume and cosplay fabric. Some of them even looked like they were from Yaya Han's line. Not 100% positive, but they did have a lot of those type of fabrics at this location. And another thing is with their patterns, they actually had a whole filing cabinet, different generic patterns. So you have that option there, which I found really nice because I didn't even know that they had that there. This location had all of your generic muslins and everything, so you can do all of your own pattern making and draping on, which was really nice. They had a good selection there, and they had a fantastic zipper selection. It was much larger than Michael's, so I did appreciate that. As well as this store had bias tape, and it also had a good thread selection. So good for Walmart. Those I really like, because sometimes I just hate making bias tape from scratch. So having a very good selection was nice for me. But I will say this location though, in general for their fabric selection, at least for me, as always, Walmart does have a big online presence as well. So if you don't see the fabric, you can still get it online, but we're trying to make this video about getting it in person, so this is kind of the options. I don't think I would go to Walmart though for my fabric selection, but if that is the only option, then there you go. The last store that I visited on our list of where to get fabric in person is Hobby Lobby. Now, I will say, no matter your beliefs or whatever on the Hobby Lobby's views, we're still covering it, and it is going to be an option for people to get fabric. So, there you go. And Hobby Lobby used to be my only source of fabric, so I used them for many years when I was in Texas in a very small city, and the nearest Joann's was 2 hours away. So yeah, I used them, and I'll say this location in Omaha, this was the first time I went to it just because there was a Joann's here, so I didn't need to go to them, but now I probably will. This location was actually really nice. It was super clean, and it also had a huge selection of fabrics. It was much larger than the Hobby Lobby that I used to go to in Texas, so I really liked that. It had a much wider selection of fabrics and specialty fabrics, so not just generic cottons, but you also had sequence fabrics. You had some different lace fabrics here in different types of materials, unlike Michael's and Walmart. They had really nice chiffon there as well, which I appreciated because the other two stores did not have that. As well as a huge selection of tulle, and for their patterns, they had even more filing cabinets than Walmart did, and they had a wide selection of all types of patterns, including ones for like bibs for babies, as well as your dresses and your costumes. As well as one thing that's different from like Walmart and Michael's is it does have different types of ribbons and finishings, doing trims and edges, so if you want to do a nice little pretty lace trim, you can just buy that. As well as, unlike the other two stores, it had faux fur. So for cosplay, that's a great option. Joann's had always a great option of faux fur as well, but the next best option now seems to be Hobby Lobby or to special order it. As well as they had tons of your draping fabrics, your muslins and everything. It was also really nice that they had a velvet and they hang it up so that way you don't get all your creases and everything in it. And they have their own designated cutting counter with 2 stations. And of course, they had my favorite type of fabric, again, that I use for a lot of my cosplays for anime ones, is the Kona fabric. And this one had a much wider selection of colors, and I really appreciate that, because then I can really go to town and get as close to the reference image that I can for whatever character I'm trying to create. And one thing that stood out for the store also was it had a much wider range of buttons available for sewing, as well as an even huger selection of bias tape. And not just your small little 1/2 inch, it had your 2-inch bias tape. And I really appreciate that. For their zippers, they had an even wider selection than Walmart did, including more zippers for jackets and jeans, your metal zippers, as well as you still have your invisible zippers and your generic ones, as well as it had a good selection for your threads. And that is the 3 stores that I visited to see their fabric selection in person so I could get the feel of it. And let me know in the comments which of these stores you want to visit to get your fabric from. As a reminder though, do a Google search for fabric in your area and you'll probably be able to find a mom and pop's shop for fabric. Not just quilting, but generic fabrics and everything. And I would recommend visiting them too and support locally so that way we can continue keeping our fabric stores open so they don't have the unfortunate demise like Joann's did. But there are also options of shopping online if you don't have anything like this available, and some of those would include Mood Fabrics. And Mood Fabrics, if you ever watch the show Project Runway, that is where they got their fabric from. And one day I hope to actually go to one in person. But otherwise, I've ordered a few times from them. They've been great, just shipping takes a little bit of time. As well as Spandex House. I have gotten a lot of my spandex from them. I've gotten my stretch fabric vinyl that I used for my Gundam cosplay there. And they have a bunch of other types of specialty fabrics. And then another one that you can do is Spoonflower. I personally have a Spoonflower shop. Spoonflower is a site that sells different types of fabric that people design. So each of the shops are actually a designer that's designing the fabric, and then Spoonflower will print it and ship it to you, and you'll find a lot of pattern design pieces. So like for me, I have a bunch of Demon Slayer pattern fabrics, so like one for Nezuko and all the other characters. And I will say the only downfall with Spoonflower is all of their fabrics are printed. So that means that the design is only going to be on one side and the other side's going to be white. But that is a great way to get custom printed fabric. So that's an option. As well as there's always Amazon, but Amazon can be hit or miss with fabric. Sometimes when I've gotten fabric from there, when you buy 2 yards, it's literally 1 yard each that is individually cut, not 2 yards as one piece. So do be aware. Also, their definition of yardage, it might be a yard of fabric, but it's only a foot wide. So you do have to be careful. Some of the shops are a little sketchy in their fine print, so be aware. And as one more closure of just a hit or miss store that you can get in person would be Goodwill. And Goodwill, there's a lot of people that they just give away sewing supplies and you can get it really cheap there, or lots of fabric. I do a lot of my patterning, draping, and mocking with generic bed sheets as well as shower curtains, the fabric ones. And I find those really, really cheap. You can buy a shower curtain for like $2 there, and it's a whole lot of fabric that you're able to do your mock-ups with. So that's a really good option, but it is going to be very, very hit or miss. So yeah. But as always, if you have other options, let us know in the comments. Support the community and share your location. If there are any mom and pop shops in your location, let us know in the comments so other people can find other fabric stores. As well as, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you as part of our community here. And a big thank you to all of my company sponsors and my YouTube members. And I'll see you for our next video. Much love, guys!